So we are going to be solving this matrix. So we want to start off by putting it in the form 1 0 0 0 1 0 0 0 1, and that will be x, y, and z. So the easiest way to turn it into that is to go like this, starting off with this 2 and then ending with the negative 2. So why don't we figure out how to make that 2 into a 1? So if we zoom out a little bit, and then let's think of an equation. So we're trying to change row 1, so R1, R1 equals, so a way that we can do this is negative R1 plus R3. So why don't we start off by writing down the bottom 2 rows, because those won't be changed because this is just an equation for row 1. So 0, negative 2, 4, 0, 3, 0, negative 2, negative 11. So let's see, so that will be 1, that will be negative 1, that will be negative 2, and then negative 7. So that is the first thing we do. And now let's move over here and try to turn this 3, because the 0 above it is already a 0, so let's skip to that 3. We want to turn that into a 0. So because we're changing row 3, let's call it R3 equals, so I see what we can do. Row 3 plus negative 3 times row 1. So we can write down all the rows but row 3, because that's the only one we're changing. So 1, negative 1, negative 2, negative 7, 0, negative 2, 4, 0, and now we will see what we're going to do for row 3. So this one is going to be 0, because that's what we're trying to do, and then 3, 4, 10. So that's the end of that step. Now let's move over again and see if we can turn this 3 into a 0. So again, we're changing row 3 equals 2R3 plus 3R4 2. And so now we can write the first 2 rows because we know that they will not be changed. So, and then this third row, we know that that one has to stay 0. And then this next one is 0. And then this last one is 20 and 20. So now that we have that, let's move on to the next one. So we are going to change that one down there into a 1. So when everything else in the row is 0 except for 1, an easy thing to do is multiply by its reciprocal. So I am going to R3 equals, 1 over 20 times R3. So then we can put in the first one. And then the second one. And then 0 divided by 20 is just 0. Then 0 divided by 20 is just 0. And 20 divided by 20 is 1. And 20 divided by 20 is 1. So there's the answer to that one. So now we're going to move over once again. And we want to make this 4 a 0. So in order to make a 4 a 0, we know we're editing row 2. So row 2 equals R2 plus, sorry about that, negative 4 R3. Okay, so now I know that the first row is going to be the same. So 1, negative 1, negative 2, negative 7. Second row is the one that's changing, but third row is going to be the same. 0, 0, 1, 1. And now the second row, 0, negative 2, 0, negative 4. So, and then there's that part of the problem. And now let's move over once again. So now we want to make that negative 2 a 0. In order to do that, because we're editing row 1 now, we do R1 equals, can do R1 plus 2R3. So we know that the lower rows are going to stay the same because we are not editing them. And then this row will turn into 1, -1, because R3 is just, both of these are zeros. And this last one is 0, because we're trying to make that a 0. And now that'll turn into -5. So why don't we move down a little bit? So now all we have left to do is turn this 1 and then the 2 below it into a 0 and then a 1. So in order to turn that 1, let's go over here and do the work over here. We can first write row 1, because that's the row that we're changing, equals, we can do row 1 plus -1/2 row 2. So because we're only changing row 1, we can write down row 2 and 3, so 0, -2, 0, -4. Oop, where did it go? So 0, -2, 0, -4, 1, 0, whoops, sorry about that, 1, 1, 0, 0. And now we are editing the top row, so that'll be 1, 0, 0, and -3. So now that we've got that step done, we're going on to the final one, where all we have to do is divide by -2, because we have the zeros on both sides. So we're editing R2 equals, remember we can't divide, so we're going to multiply by -1/2. R2. So we are not changing any other rows, so that stays -3, 1, 1, 0, 0. And so the middle row is 0, 1, 0. Then this last one is 2. So that's the end of the problem. We know that x equals -3, y equals 2, and z equals 1. Because if we convert this back into standard form, then we have 1x equals -3, then 1y equals 2, and 1z equals 1. Because this is really, the first one is really 1x plus 0y plus 0z, but we don't need to write that, so here's the answer. X equals -3, y equals 2, and z equals 1.